Good afternoon. Just to check, could I ask someone to send a message just to make sure that you can hear me? Hi, perfect. Thank you so much. And can you see the slide as well? Perfect. Let me just double check to see how I can move through the slides. Okay, that's perfect. There seems to be about 65 people in the webinar right now, but we had over 100 people sign up. So I'm just going to wait a few more minutes to see if more people are joining, and then we can start. Just for the meantime, I would be very curious to know, please answer in the chat if you want to, where are you guys all from? I'm really curious to see. Oh my God, so many different countries. Okay, so we have Greece, Germany, India, Italy, Canada even. Wow, lovely. Okay, so we have a really diverse audience today. I think I'm just slowly going to start just with the first slide and just introduce myself briefly. My name is Roos, and I'm one of the student housing officers at the Center of International Affairs. I do that job together with my colleague Ruby, and normally we would be hosting this webinar together. However, today she couldn't be here, so I'm just going to do that by myself. I think most of you will be familiar by now with the Center of International Affairs because I think we handle a lot of administrative tasks for most of you. If you're an exchange student, you're most certainly aware of us already. Just to let you know, we'll use the chat today for you to ask your questions. Normally, when we're two people, it works a bit easier because one person can tell you some information and the other person can keep an eye on the chat. Obviously, today it's just going to be me, so that's going to be a little bit harder. And I'm not quite sure yet what will be the easiest way to do it. So for now, I would say if you do have any questions, put them in the chat. I will try and keep an eye on it while I'm walking you through the slides. And often when you have some questions, sometimes they get answered later in the presentation, but I will try to keep my eye on it as best I can. And if it doesn't work, I will say so and we'll leave the questions just for at the end. So let's see. On today's agenda, what are we going to talk about? Basically, this webinar is divided into two parts. And in the first half of the webinar, we're going to talk about the housing market in the Netherlands. Normally, this webinar takes about an hour and a half. However, I have a feeling that because we're not that many people today and because it's just me, I think it's going to go a little bit quicker today. First, we're going to talk about the housing market, what you can expect, what types of accommodations you can expect to find, and some general information that can be quite important about rent protection, the procedure of renting, and something which most likely you're going to encounter also, which are scams. After that section, so after the part of the general housing market, I will leave some space for you to ask any questions if you have any. And then we will move to the procedure of the SSH rooms, which I think most of you are already somewhat familiar with. The reason we do it this way is because maybe not all of you will be eligible for one of these rooms. And I think the first part of the webinar is very important in that sense because a lot of you will have to find a room also on the private market. For the part of SSH, we're just going to talk you through kind of what to expect, how the reservation and registration procedure works, an overview of what kind of rooms we have, what to do if you want to cancel, and just some information in general. And then at the end, again, I'm going to leave some space for questions. All right. So the housing market in the Netherlands. I hope you know this already. But the housing market currently is very competitive. What that means is, sadly, we are facing an enormous housing crisis in the Netherlands at the moment. I know it's the same in some countries where you might live also, but we are experiencing a huge shortage, and this is also the case in Rotterdam. For that reason, I really, really want to stress that you start to look for your accommodation as early as you possibly can. I think most of you will be starting to study in February. However, do not wait until January or even February to start looking. Please start looking as soon as you can. We do have these SSH rooms, which I will talk about in a little bit, but the booking for that doesn't start until the end of November. Please do not wait for that to happen. Please start your search already. If you can find something else, don't wait around for these rooms, basically. Besides that, I think a lot of you would have the preference to live in Rotterdam or to even live in a specific area of Rotterdam, maybe close to your university or your university building. We do not recommend to limit your search in such a way. These areas are often very popular. It's of course not impossible to find something there. However, realistically, we would say try to widen your search. We have a very great public transport network in the Netherlands. What we mentioned here on the slides, here they're called surrounding cities. Really, Schiedam, Vlaardingen, Capelle aan de IJssel, these examples, these are what you would call suburbs, or they are on the Rotterdam metro system, basically. So it's very easy to get around the city by metro, by bike, by public transport. So when you search and you find that you're limited in your search just to the city center of Rotterdam, please do not do that. And then lastly, just as a little note, so we do have a housing office and we do have 2 housing officers. But we at RUAS, we do not mediate between any landlords on the private market and the students. So we are here to answer your questions, but we are not in direct contact with any landlords, and we cannot, as it says, mediate between you and your landlord. Then, just an overview of some types of providers. I also put the link on here to our website, where we have a more extensive list of all sorts of housing platforms and websites that you could use. Generally, either you will find a room through one of these platforms or through SSH or through Facebook groups. Now, these are all different kind of platforms. They all work in a different way. Some of them will require a subscription fee or a monthly fee. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're better than other platforms. It really just depends. Some of these might have a larger amount of rooms to offer. Generally, we find that the most commonly used out of the names on the left side are Kamernet and Housing Anywhere. These are 2 of the larger platforms. The Social Hub is also quite a nice facility. It used to be called the Student Hotel. I think it exists in different countries also, but it's a large, very beautiful building that has these student apartments and a lot of facilities in there as well. My advice is go through this list, go through the list on the website, check everything out and have a look, see what works for you, see what is available. Besides that, so these are agencies and websites through which you can find rooms directly, but you can also find a room on Facebook or in Facebook groups. And this is actually very common in the Netherlands. And we have several different groups that you can join. We also make a group each year for RUAS, which I will actually, in a moment, I will just put the link to that Facebook group in the chat. That group is newly made. We just made it today, so it's not very active yet. But basically, it's a Facebook group that you can join to look for rooms or to look for others that might be looking for rooms so that you can look together. It is to bring our students in contact with each other. We also send this Facebook group link to all of our Dutch students who are leaving to go on an exchange semester so that they can post their rooms in these groups and you can be brought in contact with them. I will share the link to that Facebook group here, but so obviously right for the moment, there won't be really anything in it yet, but you can ask for permission to join this group if you want to do so. The group is not an official part of RUAS. It is just an initiative that me and my colleague Ruby have taken upon ourselves in order to hopefully help a little bit. So that's just so you know. But generally, since Facebook is free to use, I would really advise to have a look through all these different Facebook groups regarding student housing and get into contact with, I was going to say with the landlords, but really on these groups, you're not in contact with the landlords, but you're usually in contact with the roommates, where generally one of the roommates will post a room and they wait for replies. And then from the replies that they get, they will pick one or a few people to come over to have a look at the room and see if there's a fit. So I hope that makes sense. And there. So what are the different types of accommodation that you can expect to come across in your search? So firstly, we put there student housing. With that, I mean housing provided by student associations. So usually these are large buildings that are made specifically for the purpose of renting them out to students. So you'll have a student apartment next to another student apartment or studios or something in that sense. But these are specific student residencies. What we also have, and what is probably the most common way of student housing, is a room within a student house. That is to say, a room within a regular house, where the house is shared between 2, 3, 4, sometimes more students, and you share the facilities in that house. These houses you can find all over the city, and these are most commonly the kind of rooms that will be put onto Facebook groups or onto platforms like Housing Anywhere or Kamernet. Then you might also, I know some students really have a high preference to have their own studio or apartment. These are generally fairly more expensive, but it's not impossible to find them. Depending on the platforms that you use. Some of these platforms are more specialized in studios or private apartments. And then lastly, this is something quite new to Rotterdam, but something that we really try to bring attention to, is renting a room under the structure of a hospita. And what that means, I guess you have other terms for it as well. I cannot think of the word right now, but what it means is it's usually a family or a working like professional person, not a student, who is renting out a room in their house, or maybe more rooms to students. On the list of housing providers that we have on our website, you will also find a link to Hospi Housing, which is a platform specifically dedicated to making students find a host family, is basically what I mean. For them to find a host family to stay during their exchange or during their study program. Additionally to that, so Ruby, my colleague, is not here today, but she at this point would usually tell you that she also does this. She has a 2-bedroom apartment, and every semester she also rents out the 2nd bedroom in her apartment to a student. She lives in just on the border of Schiedam and Rotterdam. It's very close by public transport to the city center. And if there's any student, it has to be a female student, but if any female student is interested, you can send us an email to the Koya Housing email address. It will be posted on the last slide also, and Ruby can contact you if you like. I asked her before I did this presentation, and she is looking for a new student for the upcoming semester. Then, generally, the rooms or the apartments that you will find, it will be specified in the advertisement. They are either furnished or unfurnished, and the bills or the total price is either including or excluding gas, water, and electricity. And that is something that it's important to pay close attention to. Generally, if you book a room within a larger house where other students live, generally the price that you will find is including all of the costs. And if you book something privately, so a studio or an apartment, generally it will be excluding those costs. As you know, in the past few years, the bills for gas and electricity have risen quite a bit also. So it's very good to take that into account before you decide what you want to book. So far, I'm not seeing any questions. So I hope everything I'm saying is clear. Like I said, do feel free to ask. And if not, we're just going to continue. But I am noticing this is going way quicker when I'm just going through everything by myself. So I think this way, the webinar at least won't be too long. Then this slide, it's just some general information about the private market and student housing. Like I said in the beginning, RUAS, or the Housing Office, or the Center of International Affairs, doesn't mediate with any of these housing providers. So all the contact that you do with these providers has to be on your own accord. You'll be able to find a wide range of rooms and apartments owned by private individuals and organizations. So the offers are very varied. Some rooms and apartments will be managed by large organizations and some by private individuals. It can be very different what you will find. And prices will start about $450 at the very low end for just a small student room, and prices can go up really to about €1,500 for private studios and apartments. Generally, prices for housing have gone up dramatically in the last few years, also due to the housing crisis. And on top of that, unfortunately, people who do have rooms to rent out often see an opportunity in international students, because you come from a different country, because you're not used to the Netherlands, and because you need a place to stay. You will sometimes find that prices can unfortunately be quite steep. Generally, for a room, I would expect to pay about €700 a month. However, it can vary really wildly depending on what you find. And I've seen offers of rooms for international students with extremely high prices. So really be mindful of that. You do need a place to stay, but don't get scammed. It can take multiple months and many messages to landlords to actually find a room. Yes, a question. Could you send us this presentation? You will be sent the slides of this presentation afterwards, and also the presentation is being recorded. So in case you need to leave early, you will be able to watch it back later if necessary. So it can take several months to find something and a lot of messages. Generally, when students post a room that they have available on one of these platforms, they will receive a lot of messages, especially as they get closer to the start of the new semester. And because of that, you will find that if you reply to a room and there's 20, 40, 50, 100 other students that reply to that room, you're not always going to get a reply back. And it's not always something personal. It just means you need to keep going at it. It can be quite demotivating, but that unfortunately is the reality of the housing crisis that we are facing right now. And which is why I advise that you start searching for a room as early as you can. Then another question, where can we find the recording? I believe the recording is going to be posted on YouTube. However, if you signed up for this webinar, you will receive an automatic email. I think it will take a few days with a link, either to watch it on the webinar website or on YouTube, I'm not sure, but you will get an email from us about that. Then money should always be transferred to a Dutch bank account. This is actually more in the realm of trying to avoid scams. And when possible, you do not pay a down payment or deposit without you or someone you trust first viewing the room. There are some exceptions to that. One of them is SSH. Another one is Housing Anywhere. But these are platforms where you have a guarantee, where you have a protection, basically, when you book a room, and there's no viewing possible, but you are protected when you book that room and pay for it. However, generally, when you see Facebook ads or you're in direct contact with a landlord and not with an association, do not pay for viewings and do not transfer any money before you first see that it's actually a real room. Then regarding apartments, a renting of an apartment is usually somewhat different than renting a room, and it's usually a bit more difficult. Very often, if you want to rent a private apartment, or for instance, if you're bringing your family with you and you need an apartment for several people, you'll need to show some kind of proof that you earn enough money, or you need a guarantor to prove as a proof of funds, basically, before you're able to book that room. If you're looking on the apartment market, the companies that rent out the apartments are going to inform you about this procedure. Then almost every accommodation that you find will require a deposit. It's not always necessary, but in most cases it is. Here it says the deposit can be up to 4 times the monthly rent. That is not regularly the case. Usually it is about 1 to 2 months of rent for the deposit, but it can go up in some instances. Then hospiteren. I think this is somewhat less common for international students. However, with hospiteren, we mean that it is a Dutch custom when a room becomes available in a student house, that the roommates of that house pick out a few people who are interested and then invite them over to the house to basically get to know the roommates. And it is basically like a selection night where they're going to pick somebody. It is more common in some places than others. I've personally never had to do this while searching for a room. I've always been invited privately to speak to the roommates, but hospiteren is when all the people who are interested get invited at the same time, and it is quite competitive. This is something that can happen. However, I'm not quite sure how common it is when you're an international looking for a room. It might not be so common anymore. Then one of you asked, what about the group you sent us? Is there still a chance of scams? Well, obviously in the group, we have to approve everybody who's admitted to the group. So the chance hopefully will decrease. Unfortunately, what you will find is that scamming on Facebook is sadly extremely common. And there are scammers active on Facebook everywhere. It's all I hear every year from students again and again. Hopefully that will happen less in our group, but be mindful of it anyway and always. And then, is there any agreement to be made with the landlord where the terms and conditions are mentioned? I think you mean the rental contract. In almost every case, the landlord is going to ask you to sign a contract with them. This contract is very often in English. It can also be in Dutch, but the contract can just be made by the landlord. You can pull templates for these kind of contracts off the internet. Make sure that you read these contracts, of course, before you sign them. And if there's anything you are unsure about, if you're not sure if the contract is right, feel free. At the end, I will put our email address, but feel free to email us, send us some pictures, or send us the contract, and we'll happily go through it with you and see if it's a trustworthy contract. And could you tell us if we have the opportunity to get a loan for our rents? No, I don't know that. There is a student loan system in the Netherlands. I don't know how it works for international students, but if you have questions about that, please contact my colleagues in student support. Maybe you've been in contact with them already, but they should be able to help you with these kind of questions. And then, will transferring our money to a Dutch account cost us more? If you could, right. This is just a trust issue. It is just because it is more safe to do so. It depends on what country you're from. If you're from a country where you have the euro, then at least usually it won't cost anything. If you live in a country where you don't have the euro, then yes, you might have to pay some costs for that. It's mainly a safety concern. Obviously, it is possible for somebody who doesn't have a Dutch bank account to rent out a room, but it is an indication that it could be a scam, and that's why we put it there. Okay, thank you for your questions. I'm going to move on to the next slide, and we'll come back to the scams at the end of this part also. Then, just some more general information also. In the Netherlands, we have a thing called rent protection, which means that a landlord, if you signed a contract with them and you are staying in the house with them or in their house, they cannot just put you on the street. In most cases, in most cases, you will not even really see your landlord or notice much from them, and you hopefully have nice roommates and a nice place to stay. However, every year we always have a couple of students who unfortunately run into problems with their landlord for whatever reason. And I've seen cases where a landlord tried to evict a student also. That is not something that can easily be done. As soon as you sign the contract and you enter into that house, you are basically protected by Dutch law, and it will be very hard for any landlord to evict you unless there's a really good grounding. So that is just something to keep in mind, just in case you find yourself in a bad situation. Know that you have rights. I am not a lawyer, so I cannot tell you exactly what these rights are, but I can guide you into the right direction if you need any help. We have two government or like legal institutions that are able to help you if you run into any issues. The first one is called the Huurcommissie, or as it's written here, the Rent Tribunal. So that is an independent government institution that is trying to help mediate disputes between the tenant and the landlord. So that is an institution that you can contact, or that I will direct you towards if you run into any severe problems with your landlord. And the third line here, juridisch loket, that is translated, that would be the legal counter, is unfortunately also an institution that I've had to send a few students to over the years. It's an office in Rotterdam where they can help you out with free legal advice, just in case you need it. In short, if you run into any issues, you can always contact us and we can tell you what institution to go to help you hopefully solve your issue. Just know that there are institutions and there are laws in place that are there to protect you as a tenant. All right. Then just an overview of generally how the procedure will go when you're looking and finding a room. First, you find the room. Secondly, we always ask you, verify the address. It is also just an extra step to prevent being scammed. Make sure that the address you see is actually there on Google and that it actually looks like how it looks in the pictures as far as you can tell. Make sure you get a viewing of the room. Check the contract and make sure the contract looks legitimate and correct. If needed, you can always contact us. We'll have a look at it with you. And then lastly, once you have arranged everything, register at the municipality. I will get back to that just at the end of this slide. Here it says a housing permit. For some streets and some regions of Rotterdam, you are required to get a housing permit. Generally, it is not really the case it's only the case for a very small part of Rotterdam. You can check out this link to see if you've already found something, if it applies to that accommodation. Generally, the landlord or the roommates are going to inform you about this also. But just to let you know, it exists and it is necessary for some accommodations. And then secondly, for some accommodations, you might be eligible for housing benefit. And housing benefit is a state, it means you can get a benefit from the state towards paying your rent. It is only applicable in very specific situations. If you're sharing, like if you're in a room in a shared house, it is almost never applicable. It's almost only in the case of having your own apartment. But again, I've provided the link, so when you receive the slides later, you can see if it applies to the kind of accommodation that maybe you found. Like I said, it will not be applicable in most cases, but if it is applicable, I very highly recommend applying for it because then you can get some money towards paying your bills. Before I get into the registration, I'm just going to check the questions. What do you suggest to do for viewing rooms if you're in a different country? So this is, of course, the problem that most of you are going to run into. It is difficult. That is the short answer. Like I said, for some platforms, there are no viewings. So for SSH, which will be the second part of this presentation, we don't do any viewings. So that would avoid that problem. And it's the same on Housing Anywhere, which is a big platform where you are protected by that platform in case of a scam. And they don't do any viewings, you just book directly. In every other case, it is really There is no clear answer to this question. In this presentation, I very happily say, oh, make sure you get a viewing. Don't do anything without a viewing. But what do you do if you live on the other side of the world? You can ask for virtual viewing, and maybe the person renting out the room or the landlord can film themselves being in the house. We have heard of scammers even kind of faking this. I don't know how common it is, but of course you need to use your common sense in all interactions that you have with potential landlords. So ask them if virtual viewing is possible at all. It would, of course, be highly preferable to do an in-person viewing. Maybe you know someone in Rotterdam who could do it, but I figure most of you probably won't. So in that sense, just communicate openly, be mindful. I'm going to say this later in the presentation also, but if you are worried and if you're unsure if the offer you receive is legitimate, you can always contact us and we will look through the information that you have together. Then, is it common to ask landlords to show their house ownership just to avoid a scam? No, that is not common. I'm going to go into, hopefully, scam prevention at the last slide of this part of the presentation. But no, that is not something, to my knowledge, that we ever ask landlords. And then I'm a master's student. I've got my acceptance and I should start my housing arrangement right now. Yes, that is my advice at least. So yes, you're not coming here until the end of January. It may seem a little bit early, but I would advise you, if at all possible, to start your search as soon as you can. Second half of the presentation will be about SSH. We do the bookings for that in about 1 month. But realistically, I would advise you to start looking today or tomorrow. Just because you will find, some of you might be able to find something quite easily and get lucky, but every year we always have students right before they start studying that are struggling still to find something. Just to limit your chances of that happening, because it will be very stressful if that is the case and you've made all the arrangements to come over here and you don't have a place to live yet. Rather start earlier than later. So I hope that helps answer your questions. Then the last bit on this slide is about registration. You may have already received some information about this from student support, or you may receive that within the next few months. However, it comes down to every person who will be staying in the Netherlands for 4 months or longer is obligated to register at the municipality. Which means if you're staying in Rotterdam, you will have to go to the local Rotterdam municipality or to one of the days arranged by student support, where the municipality will come to RUAS to make a registration. This is the way of the Dutch government to keep track of who lives where. It is a very flawed system. However, in order for you to obtain a BSN number, which is your personal registration number in the Netherlands, which you will need for administrative procedures and also if you want to work while you're here, you need to be registered at the address where you're living. I don't know from the top of my head if there is another slide about this, so I'm just going to say a little bit more about this. If you've already started looking for housing, you may have noticed that some of the advertisements will specify room available, no registration. This is unfortunately a large issue specifically for international students, because Dutch students very often, they are registered at their parents' address and they can just stay registered there while they live in a different room. That is illegal subletting. It is very common in the Netherlands. For us Dutch people, the consequences of this are usually very low. But the consequences for an international who has to register can be a bit more difficult. I thought I had another slide about this where I will get back to this a little bit. Otherwise, I will maybe talk about it a bit more in the end if you have any questions about this. I'm just going to quickly check the chat. Shall I advance the landlord well ahead of joining in Rotterdam, or just go there and pay the money just before I got onboarded? I'm sorry, I don't completely understand your question. Is it possible for you to rephrase that? And then I will look at it again in a moment. All right, this is the last slide of this part. So we're going to talk a little bit more about scams. I mentioned it quite a lot already, and unfortunately, every year again, we hear from so many students that they're just contacted by scammers over and over again, which can be very frustrating. However, luckily, most times it's very easy to identify when something is a scam. Firstly, when something seems too good to be true. Generally, that will mean if something is offered to you immediately. You will find on Facebook, for instance, that you might be responding to an advertisement, and that instead, maybe you introduce yourself, you write a nice message about yourself, maybe you ask some questions, and the person is not responding to any of that, but just instantly offering you the room. This is not normal. We do have a housing crisis. The roommates have the absolute choice of who they want to pick for the room. So for you to write a message and instantly receive an offer, however nice that sounds, that is not going to happen. It is very fishy behavior. Usually provided with very nice pictures. Sometimes the pictures don't even look the same as on the advertisement. These are all ways to know that the situation is not legitimate. Then do not transfer money without a viewing or an online viewing, and do not transfer using Western Union or PayPal. If somebody is asking for this kind of transfer, you can be certain that it's a scam. There's absolutely no reason why a landlord couldn't receive a deposit via normal bank transfer. Again, there's an exception for websites that make sure that you're protected, which are SSH, Housing Anywhere. These don't offer viewings, and you will immediately do a transfer. Again, it will not be by Western Union or PayPal. Then do not pay for viewings. This is also just a way to, unfortunately, take advantage of the vulnerable position that a lot of international students find themselves in. There's absolutely no valid reason to pay for a viewing. Please don't do it. It is not legitimate. Then no landlord will ever message you about a possibility. I said that a bit in the beginning. If somebody's actively contacting you to offer something, that is very unlikely. Like I said, the landlords and the roommates will have their pick from everybody who's searching for housing at the moment. So they're not going to come to you and make an effort to give you the room, basically. That is usually the behavior of scammers. Then make sure that you research the addresses in the neighborhoods on Google Maps just to make sure that the advertisement you're applying to looks legitimate. You can even put the photos on Google reverse image search to make sure that they are not just stock photos or photos of completely different houses. Always ask for contract. I say that while living in a house without a contract. However, I know the landlord very well. Make sure that you get a contract. If somebody is saying to you, well, it's easier, we just discuss everything, we just have an agreement, we don't need to sign anything, it may not even be a scam. It may be just a very good willing person, but make sure that you are protected as best as you can. If somebody's a legitimate landlord, they should be able to make a contract for you easily, and they should also want to have a contract with you. Yeah, this is the part I talked about a bit on the previous slide. Be aware of illegal subletting. So I will tell a little bit more about the registration procedure in the Netherlands. The reason that the municipality asks everybody to register is to keep track of who lives where. And it's also because there are maximum or there are limits to certain houses on how many people can live there. For instance, the house where I live, there is a maximum right now of 2 people being allowed to live here. So what would happen if, right now there's 2 people registered here also, if a third person came and registered on this address, the municipality would see that and they would send over either police or persons from the municipality to come and check how many people live here. And if they find out it's more than 2, we will be evicted. This has happened to me at a previous place where I lived, and we all got evicted out of the house. and it's happened to other people I know. And this is the reason why on these advertisements they will say no registration. An exchange student, for instance, a Dutch exchange student, will go abroad for a few months. They will sublet their room, but they don't want to lose their registration because they need to stay registered somewhere. So because of that, they cannot offer registration to the person staying there. This is technically illegal, but it happens a lot. It is really, really common. And like I said earlier, for most Dutch students, this is not a problem, because if we were registered at their parents' house, we can just stay registered there usually without any issue. And nobody will really know that we're staying somewhere illegally. Nobody's going to find out. However, if you're an international student, you don't have a registration, a BSN number yet, you need that number if you want to work here. So that is just the very first thing you will need it for. That you will also need it for a lot of other administrative things. I'm not sure for which things in total you need it. However, I know that it can put some people into trouble when they need a visa to stay here. So especially if you're a non-EU student, please don't get yourself in trouble and do not go for these rooms that offer no registration. You will see that it's a lot of them, but sadly, this will just get you into trouble with your visa and make you unable to work here. And then lastly, if you're in any doubt, you can ask for legal advice at the Juridisch Loket, of which I also put on the other slide, or you can email us with your question and we can refer you to them also. Then, I think this is the part of this part of the presentation concluded. Yes. I'm going to go over the chat to answer any questions you have about the private market. Please put them now. We will take a few minutes to do this, and then I will move over to the second half of the presentation, which will be about SSH. Let me see. Right. If you would pay the advance money to the landlords now or closer to the date, if you have found a good room, you can basically pay for the deposit. You can discuss that with the landlord, and if you're unsure about the situation, you can email us and we can see what we think. But yes, generally you would probably pay a lot, like a while before that you actually arrive to the Netherlands. And let me see. Do I need to register on the 4th month, or at first when I land, I'm going to be 5 or 6 months? So you don't have to register absolutely immediately when you get here. If, for instance, you don't have a place where you can register yet, for example, for the 1st month, that's fine. You will need to register basically before the 4 months are up, but also know that during that time, you cannot get your registration number. And I just need to see how far. I need to scroll up one moment. Even if you're coming from another country in the EU, I assume this is about registration. Yes, everybody has to register. I will tell you this, EU students will not always do it. There are EU students who are staying maybe for only 5 or 6 months who will decide to take one of these non-registration rooms. I work for the university, so I can absolutely not advise you to do that. All I can say is that does happen. It does mean you cannot work while you're here, or at least not legally, and you cannot really make use of any other benefits that you might be entitled to. However, it does happen. I don't know how much it happens, and it's not always a problem for everyone. I hope that answers your question. Then I wanted to ask if all the accommodations give contracts in order for students to get residence permits for more than 3 months. Let me see if I understand your question correctly. normally everywhere that you find an accommodation, you should be able to get a rental contract. Of course, not if you're staying in like an Airbnb for a month or something like that, but if you are renting a room somewhere, you should be able to get a rental contract. And again, if the landlord is not willing to give you one, either talk to them or don't go for that accommodation. You need a rental contract in order to have all your agreements agreed upon, basically. And I personally, I don't work for student support, so I will again refer you to them regarding any questions regarding your residence permit. So I'm not sure if this answered your question. If not, please write again. And then, can we get the BSN number even if the apartment does not offer registration? No. You need registration and then you will get the BSN number. It doesn't work the other way around, unfortunately. And can we work part-time just with the BSN number? I think so. From how I know it, you obtain the BSN number after registration, and then you're entitled to work a certain amount of hours each month. I'm not sure if there's a difference between EU and non-EU passport holders, but if you have any questions about working here while you're studying here, please also contact student support. Did you say we need registration if we're staying for over 4 months? Yes, if you're staying 4 months or longer. And when you say registration, do you mean register at the municipality? Yes. Then I think I answered your question, hopefully. And what is the registration like for people that will stay with a far family member? So if you have a family member in the Netherlands where you can stay at, that's great. That will save you hopefully a lot of stress, but you need to ask them. So like I said, generally it really depends per city and per municipality and per house. But depending on how the house, it's a tax issue, basically. I said in my house is a maximum of 2 people living there. If there's more people, that will change something about the tax situation. So ask your family member if you can register there. They will know. And normally, if it's like a normal, say like family house, normally more people can be registered there. So hopefully that is possible. But they will be able to tell you. I cannot answer that. And then you can just go there. And if it is possible to register, you can just make an appointment with the municipality to take care of that. How far from Rotterdam can I conveniently stay? It depends kind of on your program, and it depends on a lot of factors. Generally, I will say Rotterdam in the Netherlands in general, is very well connected by public transport. Ideally, you would want to live in Rotterdam or any of the suburban areas that I mentioned on one of the first slides, so like Schiedam or Vlaardingen. These are all very well connected. Personally, I live in The Hague, so that is a city about 30 kilometers away from Rotterdam. When I go into the office, I have to travel. I would say this is doable. It's not ideal. It would be much nicer for me also if I lived in Rotterdam. But I would say surrounding cities like Den Haag, Delft, which is even closer, and it's also a very nice student city, and even Dordrecht, which is a bit more to the south, I would say that is the acceptable kind of limit of travel. I've had students stay, for instance, in Amsterdam while studying at RUAS. That really isn't what you want. That is too far away, and it becomes quite expensive to travel all that distance on the train. So keeping in mind both how much it costs to travel and how much time it takes, I would say that is kind of the circle I would advise you to search in. What if I'm only going to study there and not work? Do I still need the registration? Yes. So like I said, it is an obligation that the Dutch government puts on everybody who's staying here for longer than 4 months. And it will have other consequences. So because I don't know where you're from, or if you need a visa or anything like that, I don't know what the consequences for you will be if you don't register. Like I said, some EU students never do it and they don't run into any problems. However, you are required by the Dutch government to register. I think that is the best answer I can give you. I would say probably the biggest problem with not registering for you personally is that you cannot work unless you have any visa requirements also. So I think that's me answering your question to the best of my ability. But yeah, from a legal perspective, you do need it. If I stay in Rotterdam for 6 months, but not continuously, meaning I will go back to my home country once or twice. Your question cuts off there, but I'm sure, there, should I register? Yes. That will just be a continuous stay. If you go back on one of the breaks for a few weeks to your home country, it doesn't make any difference because you will still be living here in the meantime. And then Omid, you have a question about SSH, an age limit on the housing websites. How serious is this issue on the private market? It's a bit difficult to answer. So as you've seen, some options will immediately fall away if you're a little bit older than the average student. So SSH, for instance, will not be an option for you. It really depends. So you will have, in a sense, more limited options, but I think those limited options are often specifically with these kind of housing associations that have these age limits. I think also you need to keep in mind, if you're searching for a room that is shared with other students, if the other students in that house are all like 19, probably they will not pick you in that sense. Probably they will not want to live with somebody who's 34, and probably the other way around also. But you will find in the end there's students come in all ages. So there will be options for you if you want to share an apartment with other students. But yes, I think generally you will be a bit more limited in that sense. And how serious is this issue in the private housing market? It's a bit hard to tell, but there are definitely many other students like you, so there are options for you out there. Let me see. In my country, landlords usually collect a huge amount of money as a deposit that is returned at the time of vacating. Is that the same in the Netherlands, or do you pay only the monthly rent? No, it is pretty much the same. It is quite common for most apartments, for most rooms, that you also pay a deposit, and it is usually an X amount of times the rent. So a deposit is usually 1 or 2 months rent, or it can be even more. Could you repeat the 3 villages or cities that you recommend? Yes, I'm going to write them in the chat. So Delft, Den Haag, and Dordrecht. Let me see. Yeah, about public transport, it really depends also. So I picked these 3 cities because, in my personal opinion, the public transport amount is still reasonable to travel between these cities in Rotterdam. Generally, the trains are very expensive, in my opinion at least, to go to the other side of the country, or obviously the country is quite small. Like I said, if you travel, for instance, from Amsterdam, that's like an hour on the train, maybe even a bit more. That's going to be very expensive to do regularly. Me coming from Den Haag, so it's a completely different city. I go on the metro. It is about €4.50 one way. So I pay about €9 a day to get to work. Completely depends on you, of course, what you find a lot and what you don't find a lot. But to give you an example, Delft, it will be a bit closer, but you need to take the train. I also think it's about €10 for a return ticket, maybe a bit less. And yeah, then within Rotterdam, we have the metro system, and that's about €2.50 one way, depending on where you go. And John, you're still waiting to be accepted in your program. Will you recommend to start searching or wait to see if you're accepted? This is a very difficult issue. I assume more of you are still waiting to hear if you're accepted. And I'm not sure when you're going to hear. I would say yes, start searching. It is better, in my opinion, to have something and to unfortunately need to cancel that. And that might cost you a bit of money, and that is unfortunate. But I will promise you it is less bad than being accepted and coming here not having anything. I don't know if you're eligible for the SSH rooms, but when I come to that section, I will explain that basically you take a risk by booking that. If you don't know if you're accepted yet, you can cancel it if you're not coming, and then you have to pay a fee for that. But generally, yes, I would advise you, yes, please start searching. And for the registration, that is in person, and that can either be at the municipality or student support is going to arrange for a few days. They will inform you about this closer to the start of the semester. They will ask the municipality to come to RUAS and you can register there. So a lot of questions. I hope this was helpful so far. And then we're going to move on to the second part, which is about the SSH rooms. Let me take another sip of water first. So I'm doing a lot more talking than I'm used to in the webinar. So what is SSH? I hope maybe some of you already read about this on our website. But SSH stands for Stichting Studentenhuisvesting. And this is a foundation that is specialized in arranging student accommodation. So SSH is not a part of RUAS. They are a foundation by themselves. And they have all these buildings filled with student apartments. And from these buildings, we at RUAS are able to reserve a number of rooms every year for our students. Just as information, but I do think it's important to say, this is a partnership, but this is not a partnership where RUAS makes any kind of money. Basically, we take the responsibility for these rooms. So if we do not have enough students to fill these rooms, we are responsible to pay for them. So in that sense, it's something that we do in order to try and help our students. It is not something in any sense that we make money out of. That's something I would like to stress. The rent of these rooms, depending on the room and the building it is in, is between 525 and about 800 euros per month. And this rent is all in, which means that every other cost, the taxes, gas, electricity, heating, everything is included in that monthly price. These rooms are furnished, so they have a bed, they have, you see some pictures already from different buildings, they have a bed, a chair, a desk, a cupboard, these kind of things. And they are in a shared apartment. So you will have your own private bedroom that can be locked also, but in that apartment will be 1 or 2 other bedrooms shared by students from RUAS, and you will have a shared kitchen, bathroom, and toilet. The rental period for these rooms is completely fixed, and this is for the second semester of the year. So the rental period is from the 1st of February until the 30th of July. I would just say right away, there's not any possibility to change that. So if you're willing to book one of these rooms, this is going to be the rental period. You are, of course, allowed to arrive later or leave earlier, but you cannot make the rental period shorter, and you also cannot make it longer. Then SSH, as I said, they are their own foundation. They're not part of RUAS at all. So they offer these short stay rooms, but they also have their own website where they offer long stay rooms and apartments, with which RUAS we don't have anything to say about these rooms. For these, if you want to sign up for any of their long stay rooms, so where you can stay longer than half a year, I think they have quite a long waiting list, and they will ask you to pay a fee as well for registration. It is up to yourself to see if you think it's worth it to sign in for that, but it's nothing to do with the rooms that we're speaking about here. Then, who is eligible for these rooms? These rooms are available to both full degrees, so master, pre-master or bachelor students, and exchange students. Between the ages of 16 and 27. If you've read the webpage like a few weeks or months ago, it would have still said 30, but unfortunately SSH has changed their rules, and the maximum age for these rooms is now 27 years old. That means if you're over the age of 27, unfortunately there's nothing we can do, but the room we will not be able to accept you into one of these rooms. And the same, also quite unfortunate, goes for students with the Dutch nationality. So SSH has these strict rules that they enforce on us. These rooms are for international students only, in the sense that you have to be an international student not holding a Dutch passport. We've had, unfortunately, students from the Dutch Antilles who may have never been to the Netherlands, and in a lot of ways, the Antilles are completely different countries to ours. We've had students with the Dutch nationality who've never lived in the Netherlands. Unfortunately, the SSH rooms are still then not available to you. We don't think it's very fair, but in the end, the rooms belong to SSH, and this is not something I can change. Then you must have been accepted into one of our study programs. What that means is you must actually be a student at RUAS, so they are only available to our students. If you've not yet received your full admission, that is okay. You can still book one of these rooms. However, if unfortunately, for whatever reason, later on your admission is not granted, you will have to cancel your room. So the room reservation is done on a first come, first served basis. Which means that there's a booking platform that's going to open at a specific time, kind of similar to buying a concert ticket. Everybody who will be waiting in line will then be allowed into the booking platform. And if you are late, unfortunately, and there are too many students before you, you will not be able to book something. This also means that if there are too many students at the same time to book, some students will be able to book and some won't. Generally, for the February intake, we are not as many people as in September, luckily, so it doesn't always happen, but it is very possible that the rooms are going to book out pretty much immediately. So make sure that you're ready on time, and know that even if you are ready on time, it's not a guarantee that you will be able to book. I saw somebody ask already if you can share a room with a friend. Technically, yes, but it's not guaranteed. So once you register, you will be able to see all the rooms that will become available to you. If your friend is of the same gender as you, then you will have the same rooms, because these rooms are separated by gender. You can see basically the different apartments, and technically you could be able to book a room in the same apartment. However, because everybody's going to book at the same time, there's a chance that might not happen. I hope that answers your question. The other two questions I will get back to in the next slides. And then lastly, it is not permitted to register as an exchange student if you're a full degree student, and vice versa. That's just an option that you pick when you register. Just make sure you fill it out correctly, and otherwise we will ask you to change that. So how does the procedure go? Just needs a bit more water. Basically, we have a registration process and then a reservation or booking process. First, you will register on SSH website. You will see the link here. The link is also on our website. We will open for registration on Wednesday, the 20th of November. I see some students have registered already now. If you have, you will have received, or you will receive, an email saying that your registration has not been approved, because right now the system is not yet ready to receive the correct registrations for the correct rooms. So on the 20th of November, the reservation or the registration platform is going to open. It doesn't mean you have to be ready and register on the 20th of November. You just have to register somewhere between that date and before we open the booking platform, which will be on the 27th. We will open for booking on Wednesday, the 27th of November at 12 p.m., so at noon, Dutch local time. So make sure that if you're interested in one of these rooms, you register at least a day before that, because when you register, we need to go through your registration, check if all your details are correct. If you leave that to a little bit of time before the booking platform opens, we will not have the time to do that. But anywhere really from, let's say, the 20th of November until the 26th, you're fine to make your registration. You see here this picture on the right side of the slide. This is kind of an overview of what your page on SSH could look like. So you see some available or apartment rooms that will become available with the address and the price and the size of the room. Basically what happens, you make your registration. After you do that, you're able to see what rooms will become available for your gender. That's the two different categories that we have for either male or female. And On the 27th, then that platform is going to open and you will be able to take one of these rooms if you have a little bit of luck and are quick enough. And again, just to stress, if you register before the 20th of November, again, the system will not be ready, so your registration will automatically not be approved. Please register from the 20th onwards. So once more, you can register from November 20th, and then all your registrations will be checked for eligibility by the housing officers, so by me or by my colleague Ruby. After registering, you will see an overview of all the rooms. Here, this is not true. Here it says the overview is different based on whether you're an exchange or full degree student. That won't be the case now. You can be placed with an exchange or full degree student, but it will only be separated on male or female. If you are eligible and we checked your registration, we will change your status to approved. Generally, we try to do that within a day or so, but we also have other tasks to do, so it might take a little bit longer. But we make sure that we check all registrations before the booking process starts within reason. So like I said, if you register right before, we will not have time to check it. But if you give us at least a day, we will make sure that your registration has been checked before the booking platform opens. So once we have set your status to approved, you will also receive an email to confirm that this has happened, and you will have access to the booking platform from your SSH account. If for whatever reason you are not eligible, so this can be if you're over the age of 27, if we do see that you have a Dutch passport, or if you are already staying in an SSH room or have stayed in one in the past, you will receive an email and then we will not approve your status. And then just question from, or just a question from me and my colleague, please do not email us to ask about your status. We will check each and every registration when we have the time. I will just quickly look at your questions. When does the booking platform open? That was on the previous slide. It will be repeated at the end. It's on the 27th of November, 12 o'clock noon Dutch local time. The registration fee, yes, there is, and I will get to on one of the next slides. What are the decision criteria for who will be able to book a room? Basically, all we look at is, are you registered to be a student? So are you either a full degree student, like pre-master, master, or whatever, or are you an exchange student? We check that. We check if you're a new student. So these rooms are really meant for students who are coming to RUAS for the first time. So if you're in the second year of your bachelor, for instance, we will not approve your registration. But if you're coming here just now to start your master, or your pre-master, or your exchange program, then yes. We check your age. We check if you filled in everything correctly. So like I said, you have to put in whether you're a full degree student or exchange. We check if that's correct. And if so, you will be approved. Then who will be able to book a room? In that sense, there's a bit of luck involved. Like I said, the platform works a bit like booking a concert ticket. Everybody will be ready at the same time, but not everybody will be able to book a ticket. There's no difference then anymore between who's who. Everybody has kind of the same chance, but if there are too many people, some will just not be able to book. I'm a master's student and age is above 35. Can I register? Well, you can register, but like I said, the maximum age is 27. So unfortunately, that's not something we can do anything about. That's a standard set by SSH, and we cannot approve your registration then. So you will not be able to book an SSH room. For you specifically, or for anybody else who's above the age of 27, this part of the webinar is only about SSH. Of course, if you do have any other questions about the housing market, you can still ask them. But really, the second half of the webinar will not be so relevant for you anymore. And yes, for anybody who's not eligible, your only option is the private market. Like you already know that you will have to book your room there. So yes, the private market is then for you. And for everybody who is eligible, still please, thank you. Still please also search on the private market. Like I said, I cannot guarantee that you will be able to book one of these rooms. Then, about the payment. There's a lot of numbers on the screen. After you booked your room, so the booking platform opens, you are able to take a room. You will need to confirm that room via email, and then you will have 24 hours to complete the down payment. SSH doesn't ask for deposit, so there's absolutely no payment of deposit. Oh, sorry, I will just answer your question so that you can go out of the webinar if you want. Genuineness, you mean if you find something, if we can check if it seems genuine, you can always ask us that. So you can always email us. I will put my email address here now also. If you're worried about anything, if you're unsure if something is legitimate or a scam, please email us and we will try and help you. I hope that's what you meant. So for the down payment, you have 24 hours to complete the down payment, and this must be done by credit card. As far as I know, they still don't accept any other method of payment for the down payment. It doesn't have to be your own credit card. It can be the credit card of a friend or family member if you have access to it. However, it does need to be done by credit card either within the 24 hours, or you can extend the payment period to 48 hours in your account if you need that. If you do not manage to complete the down payment either within those 24 hours or at the latest 48 hours, your booking will automatically be cancelled by SSH and the room will become available again to be booked by any other student who was unable to book a room before. How much is the down payment? There's a calculation for you there. Basically, all the rooms that SSH has now for the second semester of the year are all for 6 months. So they're all until the end of July. For the down payment, you pay for the first month and the last 2 months of rent. So you have to pay 3 months in total. A reservation fee of 95 euros. They also ask for a tax fee, which is 9% over the total amount of rent. And then you can choose optionally if you want a bedsheet package, which if you want that, it will be like, I'm not sure what exactly is included in it. You can ask SSH if you like, but I think it's sheets, pillowcases, basically anything you need for the bed in case you don't want to bring that yourself. But you don't have to get that if you don't want. So again, this can only be paid by credit card, and then SSH will require the remaining 3 months to be paid by March 1st. Just in the sense of being transparent, we at RUAS really don't like this. You can see that for some students how this would be quite a steep amount to pay right up front and then do the second payment with like after 1 month of living in the Netherlands. The plus side to this is that before the 1st of March, you will have paid your entire accommodation and you won't need to pay for that anymore. But of course, these are quite high amounts of money that will have to be paid quite quickly. So the example here is you book a room in Robert Pauwde. This is the apartment building with the least expensive rooms, and you get a room that costs 525 euros a month. You don't require the bedsheet package. Your down payment, it will be 3 months rent, so 3 times 525, the reservation fee of 95 euros, then 6 times the 9% over the monthly rent for the tax fee, and it comes down to almost 2,000 euros for the down payment. So if you're looking to get one of these SSH rooms, please keep in mind that this payment will be required at the end of November when you make the booking, and that the second payment, which will be a similar amount, somewhat lower because there won't be any tax fee and reservation fee, will be paid within a month of moving in. So I would say the plus side to getting an SSH room is that it's quite easy because you're able to book it without the viewing, without writing all these messages, and you can register there. So in that sense, it's all very positive, but you do need to be able to put up quite a large sum of money in quite a short while. Okay. What if you were unable to book a room? You went into the booking platform, you were on time, you were approved, but however, there were too many students and unfortunately you lucked out booking a room. What can you do? So as I said, if more students are trying to book a room than there are rooms available, not everybody will be able to even see any rooms when the platform opens because the rooms will then sell out immediately. What you can do if you missed out is to go into your SSH account to the page My Details and tick a box there to say that you want to receive a notification if any room becomes available at a later time. Keeping in mind what I just said about having to do the down payment within 24 or at most 48 hours, it means that quite often some rooms will become available again after either 24 or 48 hours. If the down payment is not completed on time, that will happen automatically. If you have ticked that box in your account, you will receive an email that a room will become available, but just keep in mind that every other student who ticked that box will also receive that email. So if you do get that, you will have to be really quick, and hopefully then you're able to book a room. It might also be beneficial just to check back on the SSH website after 24 hours, so the next day at 12 o'clock or at 12:05, and maybe also the day after, just in case a room becomes available. We see, especially for the February semester, this does tend to happen. I'm just going to have a quick look at your questions. Do we receive the down payment back before we leave, like a deposit? No. So SSH does not require a deposit at all. Instead, they require these kind of large upfront payments of the month's rent. So you do not have to pay a deposit again on top of that. It's just this amount, but then you don't receive anything back at the end, if that makes sense. Can rooms be obtained by registering only and not booking? I don't know what you mean. In order to get a room, you need to register and also book that room. So if that doesn't answer your question, please rephrase and I will try to help. Are you under 18 and unable to book a room? I think because in February we mostly start with master and exchange students, I don't think any of you will be under the age of 18. However, if you are and you were unable to book a room, you can email us, because we find that students under the age of 18 are really the most vulnerable group of students and they have a much harder time of finding rooms. We always set aside a couple of rooms just in case a student needs it. If we do not get contacted by any students under the age of 18, which is likely at this part of the year, then those couple of rooms will become available at a later point. And if you have ticked that box into your account, you will receive an email about the rooms becoming available. Your question about not having been accepted, I will come back to that in a later slide. Yes, I can give you some numbers actually. So the booking process in February, do you have any clues on how competitive the booking process is? How many people have registered? Well, for the webinar, I would say I'm actually quite surprised. So currently we have 94 people in the webinar and there's a limit of 250. Normally the webinar is always full. So in that sense, I'm surprised and maybe it won't be as competitive. For February, it's quite hard to answer. In September, it's easy because all the rooms will be booked in 1 minute and there's nothing we can do. But in February, it's quite different every year even. And we find that not always are the rooms booked immediately, but it's hard to put your finger on which rooms will not be booked. We divide the rooms equally over male and female students, but we cannot say in advance how many male or female students there will be. So it really depends. In my experience, in February, there's a bit more leeway in the sense that some rooms get cancelled or become free again. And we've even had sometimes that we had trouble filling all of the rooms. We do see that the number of registrations has gone up a little bit compared to last year, but it's very hard to tell. All in all, I know some people are going to luck out and not be able to book. And then I know some rooms are going to become available again. So it's not a great answer to your question, but I hope that's somewhat helpful. Then, Sophie, I will answer your question now. If you pay the down payment for the room, but then you have not been accepted into RUAS and you need to cancel, like you're not coming, basically it will be put on a further slide also, but you will be refunded the down payment. However, not all of it. So the reservation fee plus a cancellation fee will be charged to you. And basically it is a risk that you're taking if you're not fully accepted yet. If you choose to take one of these rooms, you're taking a risk in the sense that if you have to cancel, you will lose about 180 euros, more or less. Just stressing again, we don't see any of that money that is for SSH. Then, is the tax returned back at the end? No. So the tax fee, it's just a fee. I don't know why it's called a tax fee, but it's just a fee that is charged by SSH on top of the rental amount, and you do not get any of it back unless you unfortunately have to cancel before you arrive. If I find a private housing, is it mandatory to register in that house? Again, yes, registration is mandatory when coming to the Netherlands, and your registration will always be done in the house where you live. And Lucas, you also have some friends with who you want to book. Again, technically it can be possible, but we cannot. Basically, the booking platform will just show all the rooms and some of them will be in the same apartment. There's not even that many apartments with 3 rooms. Most of them have 2 bedrooms. So technically, if you're quick enough or lucky enough, you could book a room in the same apartment. But you have to imagine that everybody else will be trying to book a room at the same time as you. So that is not really a big chance of it happening. However, you can also try and book a room in the same apartment building and you will still be really close together. So if you are not satisfied with SSH when you check in, can you cancel? Well, yes and no. So you will have completed your down payment, you will have moved there. You can, in a sense, cancel your SSH reservation if you're able then to find a student that is able to take your room. If that happens, you can contact us and we can see what we can do for you. I think there will be another slide about this also. And then any more? For SSH, from your experience, are there no debit cards accepted? It's difficult for me to answer that. For any questions really about the payment, we always refer to contact SSH directly because I kind of do think they will accept some debit cards. You have to imagine that in the Netherlands, we don't have debit cards in the same way as they have in any other country. I know most debit cards will have this long number on it, just like a credit card. We don't have that. So for sure, you cannot pay the down payment with a Dutch bank card. You might be able, if you have like a Visa debit card or something of the sort, you might be able to pay the down payment with that, but I don't know for sure. I will write down the email address for SSH in the chat right now. Contact them, email them, tell them what specific card you have and ask if it's possible to do the down payment with that card. It might be possible. For clarity, we just inform that it has to be a credit card so that we know the information is correct. Because to us, a Visa debit card is almost like a credit card in the sense it doesn't exist here in the Netherlands. Then for this slide, it's just an overview of the rooms that we have available for that upcoming semester. We have 3 buildings, which you can see pictured here. We have the Erasmus International House, the Robert Baalde, and we have the Hatta building. The Hatta building, we have only a very small amount of rooms, and it is located really on the campus of Rotterdam Business School and Erasmus University. And the other 2 buildings are located in the neighborhood of Kralingen, which is a very popular, very heavy in student population neighborhood. It is very close on one side to Rotterdam Business School, but it's also quite close to the city center. These buildings are all located quite near each other. We will have a total of 43 rooms in the Erasmus International House. We'll have 53 rooms in Robert Baalde, and we will have 6 rooms becoming available in the Hatta building. A total of 102 rooms. Well, if based on the attendance of this webinar, where there were 94 people, if that was the total amount of students, everybody would be able to get a room. But that is the total amount of rooms that we have. And then you can see the average rent price for each building written underneath. So you can see Hatta is the most expensive and Robert Baalde is the least expensive. The main difference here is that the rooms in Robert Baalde are a little bit smaller compared to the ones in Erasmus International House, for instance. That is why they are a bit more expensive. And I asked somebody saying, which one is the nearest? Well, the nearest to what? But these are all, compared to the business school, they are all within walking distance. And they are close to each other also. And Sophie, are we able to take a look at the SSH rooms available? Yes. So immediately after you register, before even getting approved, you should be able to see an overview of all the rooms that will become available for you on the 27th. So for the person called A, I don't know what study you're going to do. So I don't know what building you will be in for your study. If you're going to study a master in business or supply chain, yes, then all of these buildings will be really close for you. And like I said, the Hatta building is on the campus, so it is in crawling distance, but the other two are still in walking distance. And that's also, they are more in a real neighborhood, so that's also quite nice. Then cancellation process. For whatever reason, you have to cancel your room. It can be because in the end, sadly, you are not accepted, but also unforeseen circumstances can happen. There can be any reason that you want to cancel. What to do? What if it's 4 weeks or more before the start of your contract? You will have to email SSH, and you will also, SSH will also bring you back in contact with us. You're down, I say that, first you contact SSH. You will be refunded your down payment, but it will be minus the €90 cancellation fee and the reservation fee that you paid. And it will be refunded to you within 4 weeks. So you, like I said, you will lose €185, but you will be refunded back the tax fee and the 3 months rent that you had to pay up front. So if at this point you're not sure if you will be admitted, this is the risk that you're taking if you want to book these rooms. If you're not admitted, you will lose the €185, but if you are admitted, then at least you will have your accommodation ready. That is kind of the decision that you'll need to make if you're coming for the full degree program. Then, if for whatever reason it is less than 4 weeks before the start of the contract starts on February 1st, so it is in January, basically, that you wish to cancel your room. Here we wrote, check if your request meets the criteria stated in SSH terms and conditions, which you will receive from them when booking. And then you email us. So the difference there is, if it's more than 4 weeks, SSH can just cancel it for you, no problem, regardless of what the reason is, and you will just pay the fee. If it's fewer than 4 weeks, you will need to email us also to request your cancellation. Officially, we can only do that if you have a very high-standing reason of a big unforeseen circumstance. However, in the end, it's me and my colleague that decide if you're allowed to cancel, and generally, we will allow you to cancel as long as we can find somebody to take the room for you, and we can help you with that. So you will need to find an eligible student to take over your contract. What I mean by that is it needs to be a student of RUAS, of the same gender as you, not over 27 years old, and not having stayed in an SSH room before. If you cannot find anybody yourself, we will help you contact some students. And basically, as soon as you found a student to take over your room, SSH can put the contract in that student's name. So that is in case something happens. In reality, every time it's happened, we've been able to find somebody to take the contract. Just please note, you cannot, under any circumstance, cancel your contract if it's during the last 2 months of your rental period. By that time, you will have already paid the full sum of the 6 months. So you're free to leave your room, of course, but we cannot set the contract to anybody else's name, and you cannot be refunded any money if you wish to cancel during the last 2 months. Then another question. Please guide us who are not eligible for SSH. I'm getting a bit worried. Can I stay in a hotel, Airbnb, etc.? I understand that is worrisome, especially with the state that the housing market is in currently. Like I said, it can be quite difficult and require quite a bit of time and effort and also luck to find something. What happens if you're almost ready to start your studies? I don't know from where you're coming also, if it's from far away or not. It all really depends, but yeah, it would be advisable if you're coming here and you don't have a place to stay yet, to book a hotel or an Airbnb, really depending on your budget. That can be from Bangladesh. So yeah, you're coming from very far. So I can completely understand that this can be stressful. Then at least make sure, if your budget allows it, that you have some place to stay temporarily. If you're staying in an Airbnb, for instance, for the first month, yes, it's probably very pricey, but at least you will have a place to stay from where you can search. And like I said, you do not need to register right away when you get here. So that would probably be your best option. Besides that, my main advice is just start searching already and put a lot of effort into your search. Thank you. You're welcome. I completely understand the stress that you're going through. And if you're worried about something, you can email us. We cannot really offer anything. And I'm very sad as well that we cannot offer these SSH rooms to you. I do not really have that much more advice than what I'm giving in this webinar. But at least if you have questions or something like that, we can try and help you as best as we can. So I hope that's helpful. Then just a little overview of, just to hopefully help you understand what the position of RUAS is in comparison to SSH. So SSH is the Foundation for Student Accommodation, and we are the university. Like I said, we're two separate institutions. We at RUAS act as a guarantor for the rooms, and we basically have these rooms as our responsibility. We can mediate between the student and SSH if necessary, and we take care of the approval of registration. So we decide who gets approved and who doesn't, but within the boundaries set by SSH. And we can help students as best as we can looking for other rental opportunities. So SSH is the owner of the buildings. The buildings do not belong to RUAS in any way, and the contract that you will have will be with SSH. It is them that you will pay to. Like I said, RUAS doesn't make any money from this, and that you sign a contract with. And any questions, it's also why for the payment credit card question, I will refer you to SSH. Any questions about the keys or about living in the building or the facilities in that building, we know the answers to most of those questions, but it's better to ask them directly, as this is their responsibility and they should have all the correct and up-to-date information. The same if you have any problems with the website. We haven't had those in a long while, but you should contact SSH directly. If you're unsure who to contact, you can always contact us, but we might refer you back to SSH for some of your questions. So here's just a recap of everything I've just told regarding SSH. Again, we open registration on the 20th of November for all students, and the booking platform is then going to open 1 week later at 12 p.m. noon Dutch local time. It will be a fixed rental period from the 1st of February until July 30th. You can come later, you can leave earlier, but you cannot amend the rental period in any way. It cannot be made shorter, not be made longer. These are fully furnished private bedrooms with a shared kitchen, bathroom, and a toilet, and you will share that apartment with 1 or 2 other students of the same gender, but everyone will have their own private bedroom. How much the rent is depends on the building and the unit, but everything else is included in the rent, so all the taxes, gas, water, electricity, internet, etc. There's a down payment of 3 months rent, a reservation fee, and a tax fee, and then, if applicable, also the bedsheet package. You have to pay for the entire rental period. Even, like I said, it starts on February 1st. Maybe you want to arrive February 5th. It doesn't matter anything in the amount you pay. The reason I'm stressing this is because we always get a lot of questions about people wanting to lengthen or shorten their stay at SSH. This is not at all possible. The room that you rent is for one person. You're not allowed to share the room with another person, and you're not allowed to have any pets in the room. And then if you have any questions during this process of registration and reservation about the procedure, you can email SSH. Oh, I'm getting a call. Sorry. And if you have any questions regarding your SSH status, you can email us. Then I think that's the last slide. Yes, I will leave this information on the screen for a moment and just go through your questions. So if you have any further questions after this webinar, you can contact us by email. But if you have any more questions now, I will stay in this webinar for maybe 10 more minutes or so, or depending on how many questions you have, maybe it's not a lot anymore, until you don't come with questions anymore, basically. So if you have questions, please ask them now. Now is the moment, and then after that, we will end the webinar. So Sarah, you asked, in some countries, we're asked to transfer a certain amount of money into a Dutch bank account as a requirement to live in the Netherlands. If we pay a part of the complaint money in advance to SSH, oh, you're talking about the money you have to provide for the IND, I think, right? Let me see. So do we still get the full monthly sum in the account still, or? I'm not completely sure how the process with, this is the proof of sufficient funds. Yeah, okay. So that is arranged by student support who are in close contact with the IND. I am not exactly sure because that amount, I know it can change on specific requirements. As far as I know, it doesn't have anything to do with SSH. So I'm not fully sure if I understand your question or if it's answered in this way at all. If it's not, I would probably advise you to email student support, as they are the best part in our office to answer all these questions about the IND and the proof of sufficient funds. I don't want to give you any wrong information. For the person asking for the registration link, I'm just going to quickly pull it up and put it in the chat. But like I said, don't register yet, please. So that is the SSH registration link. You said to have 102 rooms for next semester. So technically there is space for approximately 204 students. No, technically there is space for exactly 102 students. So these are the rooms within the apartments. These are not the actual apartments. So you book one room and that will be in an apartment with either one other room or two other rooms. Most of the time it will be one other room. Can the rooms be offered to students over 27 in case they are not filled? I wish. Personally, I would be more than happy to give these rooms to students who are over the age of 27. That is not the case. This is a hard rule set by SSH. Like I said before, it used to be 30, now it's 27. We cannot change anything about that, I'm afraid. I'm really sorry. Does a student ID give you discount for public transport? Not to my knowledge. You get a discount in a lot of other places. For public transport, generally the rule is more that you pay a certain amount a month to get a certain subscription and then you get a discount. It depends on what kind of public transport you take. And I know that for some students, they are eligible for a public transport card, but I don't know how that works for international students. Again, that is more a question for student support. So if you want, you can send them an email and ask them about it. All right, for the moment, I'm not seeing any more. Yes, that's a good idea, actually. And then for you again, I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce your name. Will you know, once registry starts, will you know the approximate number of students who are eligible for SSH? Well, the registrations will come in each day. So most students, generally, they will register on the first day. But then, like I said, you are allowed to register on other days also. By the end, yes, we will kind of know how many students have registered. I get a feeling that you want to kind of know your chance, to kind of know what you're up against. That's very relatable. I would be the same. If you want, you can send us an email like 1 or 2 days before the booking opens, and I can tell you how many registrations we received if I have enough time to see and answer your email. To give you an idea of how many students are currently not eligible for SSH, but are currently sort of in the running. Like I said, there was only 95 people in the presentation today, but they sent the email to 700 students. Now, these 700 students have not all been accepted. Some of them might not even be interested in coming anymore. Like I said, I expected more people to be in the webinar, so that is kind of a good sign for your chances. There will definitely not be 700 people registering for SSH, but how many will register, I cannot tell you. And I'm also going to pronounce your name wrong, Van Huyen. Yes, from the 20th of November, you can register and not before then. And is SSC and SSH the same thing? No, they're not the same thing. The SSC is the Student Service Center. That is part of RUAS, and I know they take care of some administrative things for you, I think to do with your proof of enrollment or your student card, or I'm not sure. These are part of RUAS. And SSH is the Student Housing Association, which is not a part of RUAS. So they are completely unrelated. Okay, I will wait a couple more minutes, but I think everybody was able to ask their question, hopefully. Like I said, if anything comes up later, feel free to email us. And also, most of this information can be found also on our webpage, the dates, the times, etc. Will there be any group or something for exchange students? You mean like a chat group or a WhatsApp group, right? Normally, I would have mentioned that because usually we do make such a group. I don't know if it's going to be made this year. Basically, there will be an introduction for all the international students, about which you will receive some emails a bit more closer towards the end of the year when they've organized all these activities. And usually, as part of that, they will also invite you to join a WhatsApp community where there will be WhatsApp groups for every exchange program, but also for the masters, where you can find your students. And usually, we also make a WhatsApp group for housing. At the moment, that WhatsApp group has not yet been created. If it does get created, you will receive an invitation for it. But normally I would be able to answer that because normally I'm also on this kind of committee that does this, but not this year. But yeah, usually it will be made. And if it's not made by us, then of course, any student can take the initiative to make it, because I know most students will want to be part of such a group. And then, so if you choose RUAS in order to register for SSH, yes. Well, Omid, a great day to you also. I also want to thank all of you for your time and for asking questions and being interactive and paying attention. Let me see. Arash, I submitted my required documents to Osiris, but your request was rejected. Is it necessary to restart the process? I don't know. So within the Center of International Affairs, because I'm saying I don't know to a lot of questions, we have different departments, and I do not know exactly what every department, I don't do that job basically. This is a question for admissions, and I will put the email address for admissions also in the chat. So this question you can ask to them. And then where can I download my acceptance letter for the housing contract? I think you will also need to ask that to admissions. So through the same address that I just posted here in the chat. Okay, and also, I will leave the chat open. Just if you want to share your contact information with each other, please do that quickly, because I don't know if you can still chat after I've closed it. But yeah, if some of you want to stay in contact with each other, please share that now with each other within the next couple of minutes. And then after that, I will end the webinar. So are you all creating groups based on your nationality? Yeah, so the reason you said on the housing period, there's a choice for either fall or fall year, no spring semester. The reason for that is because the system right now is not ready yet for the new registrations. This is why I ask you to only register after the 20th of November. If you do that, you will see that on the 20th of November, there will be the right option for spring 2025. Yes, exactly. It's not the time yet. Okay, I'm going to give it 2 more minutes for the ones who do want to contact each other, and then I'm going to log out. And like I said, hopefully we will also be making a WhatsApp group. If so, or WhatsApp community. If so, you will be invited to that WhatsApp community by email. We are also going to send out a reminder email for the SSH registration to all of you. If by that time I know that we've created such a community, I will include that in that email. I'm going to ask really to the people who should be making this community if they want to. So if I know about it, I will share it with all of you within the next few weeks. And for Ziggy, yes, the webinar will be available online. It should be within a few days, and you should receive an automated email if you signed up for this webinar with the link to watch it back. Okay. Thank you all. I'm going to sign out of the webinar. Like I said, maybe the chat will continue to be open. I'm not sure how that works. But anyway, thank you all of you for your time. And maybe we'll meet later during the introduction. I hope all of you get accepted and find housing really shortly. And I hope that you all have an amazing time in Rotterdam. Thank you for your time.